Hey, I'm Zach Nolen, and this is Gene Culture. Recently, me and my colleagues conducted a study to see how science and history are intermingled throughout time. The main theme of this study was lactase persistence. Lactase is the enzyme that breaks down lactose in milk, which was originally only persistent through the early stages of life. Lactase persistence is when lactase is continually produced later on into adulthood. Lactase persistence is a mutation that occurred over 10,000 years ago. Now, where did this mutation come from? You see, human behavior over 10,000 years ago is what affected the mutation of this gene. People started to rely more on their cow's milk in drastic times when there was not that much food. Some cultures were heavily influenced by this mutation in the gene because of their involvement with cattle domestication. Some cultures who did not domesticate cattle didn't develop this mutation because their reliance on milk wasn't that strong. Some cultures had different sedentary and pastoral lifestyles, which helped some places develop the mutation gene more than others. Now I'd like to hand it off to our Turkish correspondent, Justin Davis.
Hi, my name's Justin Davis, and I'm a biolactologist, and I'm here to describe you our study. The study basically consisted of tracing back me and two of my colleagues' genealogies. Also, we determined whether or not we were lactase persistent. And then we researched our ancestors' cultures and how it affected their lactase persistence and their lactose production. A lot of research on the cultures of our ancestors and how the cultures affected their lactase production. We discovered that agriculture and pastoralism affected lactase production mightily. As you can see, I'm very Turkish. So in fact, my actual ancestors actually originated in Turkey. My ancestors actually originated close to modern-day Turkey in what was called the Fertile Crescent. This area today actually has about 60% lactase persistence. The Fertile Crescent contained a lot of rich soil, which was awesome for agriculture and farming. People farmed many crops such as wheat and barley. Fertile Crescent also had a lot of nomadic pastoralists, which herded a lot of cattle, and that affected their lactase production. These pastoralists probably drank a lot of their cattle's milk, which then developed their lactase persistence mutation. In conclusion, the reliance on cows in the Fertile Crescent is probably why 60% people in Turkey today are lactase persistent, and I, myself, am lactase persistent.
Hi, my name is Caden Herring, and my ancestors primarily lived in a region close to modern-day Russia. My ancestors did not live off of farming because of the extreme climate in the region. Also, the soil was not good for agriculture, so my ancestors mostly lived off of hunting and gathering. Because they didn't cultivate or farm the land, they lived primarily off of the meat of the land, from animals. Pastoralists needed to live on a land where their livestock could live and eat, and this land, because of the Russian climate, did not offer that. Because of these extreme conditions, the pastoralists never used this land for their livestock. And because they never used the land for their livestock, they never got a chance to introduce it to the indigenous people. So they had no idea what it was. Because of these extreme conditions, pastoralists never used the land for their livestock needs. And in result of this, the indigenous people were never introduced to farming or livestock. Because these indigenous people were never involved with cattle, that means that they couldn't rely on them heavily in periods of drought and famine. Because these indigenous people could rely on sources of water from lakes and rivers, the adult males or females never drank milk. Now, in order for this lactose persistence mutation to develop, one must have access to milk as an adult. And in order to have access to milk, you needed cattle for times of drought and famine. So because of this lack of reliance on livestock, these people never had a chance for this lactose mutation to develop.
I'm actually a descendant of ancient people who resided in modern-day Ireland. My ancestors were dedicated farmers, and their main crops consisted of wheat and barley. My ancestors were also heavy cattle farmers. They loved their milk. Around 4300 BC, cattle arrived in Northern Ireland. These ancient people started using their cows for meat and hides. The reliance on these cattle started to increase in times of drought and famine, and the Irish people might have started depending on the cattle's milk for drink. These people were originally not able to digest their cattle's milk through adolescence. In times of stress and famine, Irish people started to rely more on their cattle's milk, and therefore a mutation occurred. As a result, people who developed this lactase persistence gene lived on, while others who didn't, they weren't so fortunate. This process eventually caused Ireland to become densely populated with lactase-persistent people, and eventually is the reason why that Ireland today is 100% lactase-persistent.
In conclusion, our studies show that human behavior and cultures affected lactase persistence.
In some cultures, humans were not prone to drinking milk because they never relied on cattle.
Cultures that relied on livestock for milk in hard times did develop the mutation, which led to lactase persistence.
Societies that did become lactose persistent were mostly pastoralist and agrarian societies.
And the reason some societies didn't become lactase persistent was because they didn't sustain the proper needs for their livestock.
Hash.
Tag!
Genes culture.